With big meaningful sequel games taking longer to release nowadays, see Grand Theft Auto 6. Today, we'll take a dive into how it's affecting Bethesda, their timeline, and most importantly, the release date of the next main series Fallout game, Fallout 5. Looking at the release dates of their biggest games, a trend has been discovered, which correlates with everything they've been saying and sheds more light on their plans for the future. Starting on the Elder Scrolls side, Morrowind was released in May 2002, followed by Oblivion 4 years later in 2006, and finally Skyrim 5 years after that in 2011. Moving to the Fallout side, we got Fallout 3 in 2008, Fallout New Vegas 2 years later in 2010, Fallout 4 5 years later in 2015, and Fallout 76 3 years later in 2018. The last Bethesda game made and released was Starfield back in 2023, 5 years after the release of 76. Looking at this information, we can see that, on the Elder Scrolls side of things, a new game was released between 4 to 5 years apart from each other. Now with Elder Scrolls 6 slated for a 2026 release, that would be a 15-year gap in between releases. On the Fallout side, we see a 2-year gap between their first two games, but given that Obsidian made New Vegas, we actually have a 7-year gap between Bethesda Fallouts for their first two games, and 3 years later for 76, which technically wasn't a main series Fallout game. So taking all this information, we see a 2 to 5 year gap between releases regardless of IP, and a 4 to 7 year gap between releases of main series sequel games, with the gaps being bigger the more current you go. Now with all that being said, we can safely deduce when Fallout 5 will be releasing. We know Elder Scrolls 6 will release in 2026, 15 years after Skyrim. We know Fallout 5 will come out sometime after that, and we know they are planning to release for the next-gen consoles. Couple this with the fact that their games, regardless of IP, release every 2 to 4 years, and the fact that Fallout 5 will definitely be a big release for them, and we can pinpoint the release of Fallout 5. 4 years after 2026, which is the release date of Elder Scrolls 6 as we stated before, would be 2030. 2030 would be exactly 15 years from the release of Fallout 4, which is the same gap that will be between Skyrim and Elder Scrolls 6. Add in the fact that the next-gen consoles are likely to drop around 1 to 2 years before this release, giving them much-needed time for optimization, and it confirms it. Fallout 5 will release late October or early November 2030. The game could be delayed, but it will not be released before this date. But with all that being said, do you agree, disagree, or have anything else to say? Leave a comment, and I will get back to all of you. I also ask that if you enjoyed, please consider clicking that thumbs up button and subscribing for more. It really helps me out and is greatly appreciated. But above all else, remember that you are awesome.